Safety, Counselor Watney.
Here.
Counselor Wilberton. Is he not here? Counselor Jones. Counselor Nelms. Here. And Counselor Hart.
Here.
Okay, so you got 2 absent. Just that a
All
form?
right, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to dispense with the reading and approve of the minutes from the Public Safety Committee meeting of July 11th.
So moved.
I have a motion by Council Hart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Council Jones. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right, under old business, 1903-22, request to consider traffic calming updates for existing projects, Councilors Alleman and Wolverton, and other areas as well. Well, let the record reflect, Councilor Wolverton.
Was he wasn't here at roll call.
He just won't.
He was not.
Yeah, if I forget.
Do you guys have, or even?
I talked to Randy. I don't know if he's got anything for South Forest. I know that was the first stretch. I think that they're putting that together. He said he has Delcris left up in Forest Brook, and then he'll be ready to speak on that.
All right, we'll get an update before.
Yeah, Kale, do you have anything else?
I mean, yeah, he's got results for South Forest.
Okay. Did
So-
you have any of that?
I mean, I can report what they are.
Sure.
Just for information.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's mainly what this item is at this point.
So the old study, the original was done in April of 21, showed that the daily traffic volume headed southbound was 502 vehicles. The mode speed was 25 and the 85th percentile was 34.18 miles per hour. Headed south on the ones that, that was the northbound side. So in front of 557 on the northbound side, the new traffic count was 770, so we're getting a lot more vehicles. The mode speed was 20, so the average speed dropped 5 miles per hour, and the 85th was 26.64, which was a pretty significant.
Much closer to the speed limit.
There. At 905 South Forest, it was about the same. The 85th percentile was 30 and 30.5.
67.
And the mode was 20
For the new numbers?
for the new numbers.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, generally speaking, both time volume went up and
Speeds came down.
Speeds came down, at least 5 miles per hour. Headed in the other direction. On the southbound measurements, the old study in April of 21, the average speed was 25 and the 85th percentile was 36 miles per hour. And so on the new study, which included the chicanes, the mode speed was 20, so the average speed went down, but the 85th percentile was 33.46. So the average came down, but the speeders were still speeding.
They were going a little slower.
They were going a little
36
slower.
or 33.
Sure.
The chicane might not have been in good shape.
They weren't.
So, Brian, can you hear me?
You might have taken that down the road too.
Did you have any feedback from the city website on these locations? You did?
Yes. He's been included on those. Nick has.
Yes, so I've been receiving feedback when the JOT form's been completed, and I would say there's probably been a dozen to 15 JOT forms completed so far. There's a lot of people who think they're ridiculous and that they're annoying and we're the joke of their street. And then some people say, this is great, I love it, you know, speeding is a problem. So I think, well, the follow-up is basically to say, these are temporary installations.
Sure.
We know that straw bales aren't a permanent solution to traffic calming, but we wanted to give it a try and collect some data and have a discussion point. So I think that the opportunity is to see where there's possible impact, and then to look at what permanent installation may look like as far as materials, whether that be, concrete and planters and some, contained within an island so that it looks, appealing aesthetically, and that takes additional funding, right? So looking at where it makes sense to do permanent design and, looking at funding and what that looks like.
Could we go through an exercise where we come up with a base cost, or at least some sort of template for funding these? Because then we can say, as we approach budget season in the next couple of months, this would be good to know. Just if we decide to do one or both, I think yours is different. That we can assess it and say, okay, we're going to implement 1, 2, 6 of these in the city,
Yep.
wherever, and it's going to cost this much. And then we can put a buffer in for our plus minus that will be 30% over what we expected it to be in the bid.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
I plan to do that.
All right. So, what's the will of the committee or counselors that want to provide additional feedback on this item?
I was just thinking that, do we have some minimum change that is gonna cause us to go ahead and spend that money? And is there something that we should have to say, hey, here's this street didn't have the stats for it, but this one did. And
Sure.
is there something that, as opposed to, hey, we're just gonna put these everywhere and,
That's a good point.
And I wanted to mention, it'd be good too if we could have a follow-up, especially connecting back with these folks who have submitted. I think that's a pretty decent number. Don't have any amount, but thinking through how we respond, if it's this upcoming year, we're gonna have 2 or 3 more or whatever, but just a way that we can at least let them know we've heard them and kind of what we're doing moving forward. And we have all their information, so we can do it anytime.
And I don't remember, Mr. Kendrick, does anything permanent become an ordinance, is that
Yes.
correct? So we'd have to have a public hearing if we decided to move forward with it anyway, but I think, I don't know, I think obviously when we developed the traffic calming policy, we used some thresholds with which initial traffic studies had to breach in order to justify even looking at something like this. So I don't know if we want to consider, if the reduction was enough to bring it below that threshold. I'm fairly certain all these traffic studies were done during normal work days, business days. Is that?
Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah, but like during the week, not weekend kind of thing,
That's right,
right?
during the week.
So, it's a 72-hour window. So yeah, I think it's worth discussing what's our threshold for installing.
President White.
So I would agree that before we take action on one of these, we need to contemplate what is the threshold, whether it's a certain reduction, whether it's 85th percentile, whether it's the average, whether it's, I think we need to probably have more discussions about that to make sure we're actually, one, affecting change, sufficient change to justify the money, and two, that we're taking into account what that means for the rest of Homewood, right? How many streets are these gonna end up on, and what does that do to traffic flow in addition to the speeding on the street there? It's a very multifaceted issue, and I think it probably requires us to look at that and have some more conversations with Kale and other engineers if we need to sort of see. I think we've got an idea now of sort of what can happen with these. Now we need to figure out what the effect of those things is in terms of the reductions. And so I would suggest that we have further discussions about that and considerations with the engineers.
And, since it is relatively new too, it may take looking at that traffic calming policy again overall, to look
Yes.
at like what options are there and what really isn't a consideration anymore. Just to think through some of that.
I agree. What, the end result could easily be an amendment of that policy. Now that we've got some specifics and we're starting to consider some of the things that were contemplated by that policy but are not set forth specifically in it.
Yeah, because to the point you just made, I do have concerns about the long-term changes in traffic behavior and how that forces a problem that was on this street onto someone else's street. However, I do like our current enforcement tactic. Homewood police have been out writing tickets for running stop signs, and 4 of my neighbors have complained. I was like, you are also the one who is speeding. Yeah, that's just running stop signs.
That's the answer.
But
Every
That's the
time.
answer.
yeah, hate it for you, but okay.
And I think specifically for the Forest Brook area, there's really just one main thoroughfare. The only way to bypass it is to go up the hill into Hoover or to come down the hill onto Lakeshore, which is really more designed for that kind of traffic anyway. So I do think I think we'll have to take each section individually based on, the current.
So
Because altering those traffic patterns are obviously desired, right? That's really kind of minimizing the amounts of people that really have to be there, or it's primarily going to end up being more expensive if it deters people enough, so.
Mr. Smith, can you share the original and the latest traffic results with the committee?
Just the email?
Via email, the traffic results, the most recent plus the original, so we can, I like to review them, so. And then,
Wait on the last Forest
you
Brook.
loved it.
There's one more that's still out there.
right.
Del Chris, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when he gets that, he'll
Okay.
send it to me, I'll send it all out.
So homework for committee and council, be thinking about those thresholds, which would warrant the capital expenditure and the potential. In any one of these, I think you have to assess the potential for the impact to neighboring streets as kind of a special consideration. We can't put context around that in writing. So, okay.
Just to reiterate, we chose chicanes because they were something we could do temporarily at relatively low cost to do a study and look at the effects.
Yeah. So we'll carry over 1903-22 for additional information. 1806-22, public hearing set for July 25th, 2022 at 6 p.m. for consideration of condemnation of the dwelling structure at 2900 16th Place South.
All right. This property has been on the radar of the abatement board since 2018, possibly longer, but I know we've been dealing with it since 2018 when we condemned an accessory structure that a tree had fallen on. The condition of the property now has devolved to the point where it's sitting wide open. Anyone can get in. Ryan, if you go to this, it's kind of hard to see in the shadow here. This is all wide open. It appears animals have been coming and going up through here. The property itself is just completely unmaintained. It's dilapidated. Interestingly, there's a light burning, so it has power.
Wow.
But that's kind of scary.
It is a little scary.
There are plants growing inside the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There are plants growing into the house. But all attempts to reach the homeowner's record with the tax assessor have failed. So here we are.
So, since I've lived in Homewood 10+ years, this property has been in disrepair because it's around the block from my house, and been in disrepair since I've been here. We have cut the grass at least once, if not 2 or 3 times, every year I've been on council.
Well, we took that giant tree down.
We took the tree down, we've torn down the accessory structure.
Yeah.
No one currently lives in the house. There actually is a car that has been abandoned behind the house, I believe, still.
Years.
So,
We cleared that lot 3 different times, cleared.
And
yeah.
can I?
It generates the most
I'm not on the-
complaints.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
not on the
Counselor
committee,
Smith.
but the Coolies who live in the house directly behind have reached out to me and said, is this thing going away? Because, I think they see outflow from the house
Sure.
in the form of things, creatures.
And we talked to the owner last year.
Really?
Yes.
We did.
At the abatement board and talked to the owner, and she had many things to say that she was gonna do, and as far, she said she was gonna put it on the market. There was a sign put in the yard with a number that was not a good number, so.
Yeah,
it's-
nothing has-
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst house I've ever seen. since I've been on the
There was one
council.
across the street from this one that was pretty bad for a while. It's now turning into 3 homes.
So, do we not have a good address for that person based on tax records? I guess is the only way we get it.
Tax record leads you to this house.
Yeah. So she's getting her tax bills there.
She gave me a phone number at one time where I was able to reach her, but it's no longer in service.
Well, she must be getting a power bill from somewhere.
Ain't paying it.
I think the direct neighbor across the street might know how to reach her, and I might know somebody else to reach her.
Okay. I posted notice on the house itself, bright yellow placard. And maybe if she comes by to pick up a power bill or something, she'll see it.
I'm sure she knows.
Well, she
I
came
have
and
no
spoke
doubt.
during the garage, public
Yeah,
hearing.
she came to the meeting.
Yeah. Yep. So, with the public hearing set for July 25th at 6 p.m., the appropriate recommendation is, without our recommendation, is there a motion?
Without.
Counselor Wolverton makes the motion.
I'll
Is there-
second that.
Seconded by Counselor Harden. All those
Who
in
was the
favor,
first?
Counselor Wolverton, with a second by Counselor Harden. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 4-0, with no recommendation. 1906-22, public hearing set for July 25th at 6 p.m. for consideration of condemnation of the structure at 137 West Glenwood Drive. Mr. Pugh.
On the, when you just sort of drive by from the street, this one may not appear, it instantly look as bad as the others. But it's been sitting like this for several years now. If you go to, I think it's the next picture. Yeah, this one, you can see through the glass door. There's no roof on this house. And it's been like that for several years. There's a tarp that stays tacked up intermittently, but it blows away periodically. I don't know how much good it's doing anyway. Recently, after word got out that the abatement board was going to consider this house once again, the owner did begin doing some minor things to sort of, tack things back together. He did show up at the last abatement board meeting and promised he would have the project finished by the summer.
Yeah.
The neighbors were willing to sort of give him that grace period, but he's not really been as responsive
I'm
as
sorry, I
he
keep
sounded
speaking.
like he would be.
Counselor Smith.
So this is in Ward 4, and I have been communicating with the neighbors on West Glenwood who have been living with this for a long time. And what the pattern has been is when it comes up on the abatement board agenda, suddenly work starts happening.
Yeah.
Kind of a flurry of activity starts to happen. So that's exactly what happened this time. There has now been a metal roof put on part of the house, not on the whole house, on part of the house. And I drove by there on my way here today, and some measure of work. There's a giant dumpster now in the front yard that's there now, which I'm sure the neighbors are loving too. But so I emailed the main person who I speak to, and I think the mayor, they're all planning on being here for the public hearing. But the response was, I said, what do y'all think? And she said, the metal roof is only on part of the house. The windows look the same as they always have. None of the neighbors that I've spoken to believe there's any possibility that he actually is gonna finish this house. This is all last second, cheapest possible effort to avoid a condemnation vote. I spoke with Wyatt, and we both don't, with that being how the house has been left open, you can't imagine that the conditions of the inside of the house are super great.
Yeah.
And his constant thing has been is, I'm gonna get it done and I'm gonna put it on the market. Which at first the neighbors were like, great, that's what we want to happen. We want the house to get done so it can get sold to somebody, but it's not happening. Hasn't happened.
Councilor Smith, I also want to point but at the abatement meeting, the property owner stated in response to his neighbors saying, oh, there's gotta be mold in the house, it's gotta be, he said he was gonna hire a mold abatement company, like a professional team to come in, and, I told him, fine, I would need a report from them, though, sort of a before and after type deal. He claimed he hired someone, but that's the last I've heard from him, he's not provided me with any reports about that. So,
Got down on
Any other comments from the committee?
Do they have open permits?
he does have an open permit, yeah, right before it went to the abatement board, he came back and said, I'm gonna fix
Interesting.
it.
Yeah.
Would like to reopen my permit that was voided for inactivity a year ago. And so he presented some plans, even presented some pretty good plans.
Yeah.
So, I
So-
issued him the permit in hopes that he
Do
would
something.
take off, but it
Yeah.
hasn't.
We'll send that recommendation as well.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
All right, so a motion from Counselor Wolverton,
Second.
second from Counselor Harden. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 4-0. And with that, the Public Safety Committee is adjourned.